Hello and welcome to Indo Politics on a week where politicians have been picking up the pieces from those by-election results. Results that saw the Social Democrats and Holly Cairns on the ascendancy, possibly at the expense of Sinn Féin. And as the sun shines and the Dáil would usually prepare for its wind down to the summer recess, politicians on both sides are preparing for what could be a serious battle over the Occupied Territories Bill. I'm joined by Maeve McTaggart of our political office. Maeve, first of all, the Occupied Territories Bill has finally been signed off on by Cabinet after 8 years, but it's not exactly what everyone wants, is it?
No, not exactly what everyone wants, and not everyone is happy about the conclusion that we've come to. I suppose this was first introduced many years ago by Senator Francis Black with the intention of goods and services from the Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories all being included in this ban. The government, after seeking legal advice, which is a line we heard quite often over the past few months in particular, they had received legal advice from the Attorney General. They've come to the conclusion that they can't include services in this bill. So things like tourism and the tech sector, those kind of more intangible service in terms of trade, we've instead settled on a ban of goods. Unfortunately for the government, the opposition is really taking this very strongly held view that this is not good enough. Sinn Féin leader Mary McTaggart has said it's a hollowing out of the Occupied Territories Bill and is not as it was intended by opposition, by Senator Francis Black, but also taking the line that perhaps this is not what the public wants either, and wants the government to take a stronger view to include goods and include services. On the other hand, you have the government holding the very strong stance that to include services would have a lot of consequences on the Irish economy, particularly for multinationals working here. And Micheál Martin, really, we heard him in the Dáil during the week taking a very passionate, I suppose, rebuke of the criticism coming from the opposition benches.
So, okay, you want to ban trade with Israel? Do you want Intel to stop dealing with its sister company in Intel? Yeah, fine. Talk to the thousands of workers in Ireland working with Intel. What happens there? Have you walked even through? Have you walked through the chair? Have you walked through the implications of it? Has anybody in the opposition done an assessment of what it would mean economically? Have you? Do you give a continental if the US goes south because of what we might do there? That's great. It's great to be virtuous, Deputy. But for the workers' representative, you lack all virtuosity when it comes to protecting Irish workers.
Yeah, he's really beginning to push back against the opposition on this now because, as you said previously, it was all about the legal advice and what's possible and the advice of the Attorney General. But now he's admitting that it's under pressure from the US side in particular that we don't want to include services, even though potentially we can't include services anyhow from a legal point of view. So he's putting up the fight and saying, I have 2,500 jobs to look after here. So it's kind of coming down to a battle between principle, really, and practicality, isn't it?
I think that's a good way of putting it, particularly, you know, I think the government's argument on this would be that the opposition can call for, you know, a particular stance to go as far as possible, but the opposition don't necessarily have to be the ones to enforce this and don't have to face the potential economic and financial blowback. You know, on the other side, there is the argument still from the opposition that should we not take as much consequence as possible when we have this really strong moral stance that we should be taking. You know, in practical terms, is that possible? The government doesn't seem to think so. You know, for the last few months, and I'd say going back at least the years when this conflict first began, where the government said that they wanted to enact the Occupied Territories Bill, we saw it come up again and again on lists as it will be enacted. They were seeking legal advice, but the government has long said that their ideal scenario would be that there'd be a European-wide stance taken on this, but that hasn't come. So the Occupied Territories Bill, you know, the argument now is that is a more symbolic than perhaps was originally intended, but it is at this stage symbolism all that the government is really able to do when you consider that balance between jobs, the financial impacts, also those US multinationals. Perhaps it's an admission that I think is an interesting one to kind of say it in such stark terms, really.
Yes, because the government is worried about the bill even as it stands, that, there's pressure from the US, to not proceed with this, or that it could cause reputational damage from a business point of view. But Micheál Martin made an interesting point in the Dáil that there are only two powers that can stop Israel. One is the United States and the other is a European Union that's united. But the EU isn't really at this stage united on this, is it? I mean, they don't want to go ahead with suspending this trade agreement.
Yeah, exactly. At this stage, if we need the US and we need the EU to take action on this, we have neither at this stage. The government, in this sense, is kind of acting on its own in relation to the Occupied Territories Bill and doesn't have that EU-wide consensus that it perhaps needs. It's interesting when you look at, I suppose, the wider picture that the government often will point to when it's discussing its own actions that it's taken and the stance that it's taken on Palestine, on pushing back against Israel, on the kind of more global stage, and kind of working towards some sort of general consensus on a European level. It doesn't seem to be able to be following through. I suppose Europe doesn't seem to be following through on that in terms of a more wider scale. But when you look at here, then the opposition is really pointing to government as a lack of action on this, particularly when you're looking at as well. And all of this conversation is happening this week in the background in relation to Ireland playing Israel in the Nations League. That first match is due to take place in September in a more neutral venue, but that match is, as it stands, coming to the Aviva in October. And the government is now facing calls from opposition politicians, from supporters, from fans, to intervene in some way towards stopping this match, but the government has said that is a decision for the FAI to take.
Why does the government think it's okay to play against a football match against a state that is in the dock and the government itself has said is guilty of genocide?
Well, listen, we've always been clear that it's a matter for the FAI to decide. Obviously, they brought a motion to UEFA, which they didn't get support for. Unlike with Russia, UEFA have not banned Israel from footballing competitions, and the FAI are fulfilling their obligations within their own footballing structure. We as a country continue to lead out in relation to the activities of Israel.
Players were pointing to you, and players were pointing to the government yesterday.
Well, I mean, the government have always been clear in terms of where the decision lies here.
Deputy Brennan.
So this is another, I suppose, a diplomatic consequence, really, of this match.
Yeah, and I actually think that match could become such a sort of touchstone for people. I really do believe that the significant, huge portion of our population who feel very, very strongly about Israel's actions, and that would be the majority of Irish people, and people feel so impassioned with their sort of disgust and disdain for what's being done to people in Gaza. I think they could really rally around that match, but not just people who've been protesting or out and about protesting already. I think it could widen beyond that. At this point, what does the government plan to do? Like, do you think the match will go ahead in Dublin? Will it happen with fans? I mean, it seems so unrealistic that would happen, yet that seems to be what they're saying will happen.
It's very difficult, particularly for fans to stomach. I think that this match would go ahead. You can see a lot of fans in particular very conflicted over the game. The Minister with Responsibility for Sport, Patrick O'Donovan, and the Junior Minister, Charlie McConnell, were in front of the Oireachtas Arts Committee yesterday. They were asked about this match, about what can be done. Social Democrats TD Sinead Gibney was asking whether the government has actually investigated what the level of sanction that the FAI would have to face if they didn't go ahead with this game, whether the government could cover a sanction like that. What about the broadcasting of the match from RTE? Patrick Donovan's answer was that, look, it's a matter for the FAI whether or not this goes ahead. The FAI has said that they will face such a level of sanction that they have to go ahead with this game.
Yeah, and I thought it was very telling that the ministers themselves aren't going to go to the match. That probably indicates they don't want to go ahead, or they think it shouldn't.
Yeah. So they were asked whether, they themselves as individuals, maybe as a form of protest, or in what other sense would they maybe consider going to the match themselves. They both said they don't intend to go.
Just ask in a personal capacity. I've made a personal decision myself. I go to all the Irish home games, and I have done for a number of years. But I'm choosing personally to stay away from that specific match when it is played later this year. And if you wouldn't mind, maybe in a personal capacity, saying, is it your intention to do something the same, or would either of you consider it as a form of personal protest rather than dictating to another government agency?
I won't be going to the match.
I don't intend to attend the match either, Deputy Sullivan. No.
Thanks.
Fair, straight answer.
But they also said that at the end of the day, this comes down to the FAI. But I think you're right. I think this will go on for a long time, particularly now as we have players themselves discussing how difficult a decision it's going to be. You had Republic of Ireland captain Nathan Collins saying, look, if players want to take a stand, they can take a stand. Seamus Coleman also saying perhaps it's unfair that this has been put on the players and that there's a need for the government and the FAI really to take this in hand.
Yeah, my views are very clear in the fact that Nathan and the younger players in Ireland and the fans and the manager, that shouldn't have landed on our toes to answer questions about this. It should have been dealt with above us. I said to Tony earlier, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I've got a heart. I know the difference between right and wrong, so it's if I ask you the same question, I'm sure you're off the same opinion of what's happening. It's awful. It's extremely sad, and it's a very difficult position for the players to be in. I don't think we should be in this position. Absolutely not.
Because as we kind of approach those games, I think it will get increasingly harder for us to take this stand on an international level, and you still have this match going ahead at the Aviva. It's going to, I think, really be the centre point of a lot of people's thoughts about the Irish feeling towards the game. Again, I imagine the government will be quite concerned about, I suppose, the diplomatic impact of taking a strong stance of coming down and saying this game can't take place here, whether it takes place in a neutral venue abroad. I think Patrick Donovan yesterday was again leaving that open to the FAI, whether they wanted to pursue something like that, whether that's even possible. So I think we haven't heard the last of this, and I think it's going to really be difficult and really, I suppose, an example of how strongly Irish people feel about Palestine and about the Israeli actions in Palestine.
And Daniel Ennis, who won the seat in Dublin Central for the Soc Dems, his first public utterances, his first headline as a new TD when he took up his seat on Tuesday was him calling for that match not to go ahead. So it seems that the Social Democrats have really tapped into the sort of anger that's out there around Irish government's policy towards Israel. Do you think this is benefiting the Social Democrats electorally, in the sense that, do you think they're speaking the language that many younger people in particular, for whom this is such a huge topic, kind of can latch onto or understand?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, particularly in the context of Daniel Ennis, who himself is a former League of Ireland player, so was really coming from the perspective of players and where players go and fit in all of this. I think when it comes to the Social Democrats, and perhaps again it's going back to that question of practicalities over, I suppose, passion on the subject matter, the Social Democrats, I think, have become quite known for, I suppose, in a sense, maybe having their finger on the pulse when it comes to these social issues, and has really been able to sense where the public is fitting. I think particularly younger people, again, they have that social media presence, they have their TDs are really able to, I suppose, as you say, kind of speak the language when it comes to issues like Palestine. And again, when you see Daniel Ennis speaking about this on his first day in the Dáil, I think it's again, I suppose, an indicator to those younger voters, to their kind of pool of voters, where to come from.
And I remember 10 years ago, Mary Lee MacDonald was Holly Kearns. She was the one speaking the language of a younger generation. All the analysts at the time said everyone under 35 is voting for Sinn Féin. This secures Sinn Féin's future because there is a generation that really, really strongly are following Sinn Féin. But the newness, I guess, in the sense that, well, they weren't a new party, but they were offering an alternative to a generation who didn't really have any concerns about their past. That sort of shine or gloss has gone off Sinn Féin now. And it seems that, questions are being asked as to whether Sinn Féin is really a party of the left. And meanwhile, you have Social Democrats very strong amongst younger generation of voters. It's true. And I think particularly when you look at over the last few days and the fallout of the by-elections, Mary Lee MacDonald took the stance of, look, by-elections are kind of peculiarity and you can't really read too much into them. This isn't necessarily what will happen
at a general election. I suppose we can't say that, we can't see that far ahead at this stage. But it's interesting, particularly after the last few days in the by-elections, where you did have Janice Boylan finishing fairly high up the field in Dublin Central, but it was Mary Lou McDonald's own constituency and they were unable to get her across the line. Sinn Féin in Galway West also didn't really feature as strongly as you would imagine the largest opposition party would have. And it's raised a lot of questions, I think, particularly maybe among the Social Democrats as well, to maybe dream bigger than they had ever imagined they could have in terms of the place that they would have in the opposition, or as they work and build towards the general election, whether they could see themselves being in perhaps a stronger position than Sinn Féin coming into that next general election. Because in the aftermath you had, Holly Cairns saying, look, Sinn Féin perhaps do have questions to answer about where they stand on certain issues. You also...
Sinn Féin is at a crossroads, she said. Do you see Sinn Féin now as a party off the left?
Look, we would always encourage people to vote left, transfer left. We absolutely need that cooperation on the left. And, I think Sinn Féin may be at a crossroads with a number of issues. That's a matter for them, but I think they need to figure out where they're going.
True.
I was delighted to hear that.
I imagine so, and especially as you have, Sean Kine elected, that leaves open a seat in the Seanad now to be filled, and you can already see, I suppose, a bit of jockeying on the left about what Sinn Féin stands for and whether they are a party of the left, because you see them perhaps being squeezed on the left by the likes of the Social Democrats, but also maybe being squeezed on the right by the likes of, Independent Ireland, in Dublin Central, maybe the likes of even Jerry Hutch in certain areas. So it raises a lot of questions in terms of that Seanad by-election, which is definitely less exciting, I think, than a Dáil one. But you have Labour leader Ivana Bacik. She's looking for a shared left-Green candidate to go forward in that by-election. She's asked the Social Democrats and the Greens to maybe put forward that shared candidate, not considering Sinn Féin in that pitch. Whereas Holly Cairns has put a pitch forward to Labour, the Greens and People for Profit and Sinn Féin in that. So I think you can already see the parties themselves on the left looking at where they position themselves in relation to Sinn Féin, and perhaps trying to get a sense from the tea leaves of maybe where voters see Sinn Féin at this stage too. The Palestinian issue, Sinn Féin are very much aligned with the parties on the left. On other matters, less so. And you can see, particularly in the by-elections, I think is a good reflection, or even similarly in recent weeks, their position on, I suppose, more liberalisation of the abortion laws. Sinn Féin has struggled to see where it stands, even on issues in terms of migration, the Ukrainian accommodation payments. They're a bit trying to be all things to many people, and I don't think left voters in particular, or maybe the parties on the left, are loving to see where that's going, particularly now as the next election will be, I think 2029 is when we'll maybe get our locals. So
it's a long way away.
Yes.
A lot can happen. But I remember the last election, the Soc Dems and Labour stayed out of government, really. Labour in particular would have been a preferred partner of Fianna Fáil to form a government. They stayed out because they were eyeing each other, and they knew that whichever one of them went into government would more likely reduce their seat numbers over the longer term. Whichever of them stayed out would grow their seat numbers. Soc Dems are growing in opposition. Labour potentially, Helen Ogbu performed very strongly in Galway West as well. So they both might grow in opposition, but in order to get into government they need Sinn Féin to make up the numbers. Yet none of them seem too sure about whether Sinn Féin is really a party of the left from an ideological point of view or not. So we're kind of back to this whole question. It was always the case that the left couldn't get their act together to coalesce, to form a government, that there was too much infighting between them. Then it seemed they rallied around Catherine Connolly, and they thought, OK, there's a future here for an alliance of the left, for a potential government of the left. And it didn't really last very long.
No, and I think they would say that
old ways.
Yes, I think so. And I think they would say that it's maybe continuing on in name. They're exploring options. Holly Cairns said at the Count Centre at the RDS on Saturday that, a left government is, in touching distance maybe at this stage. I wonder how far that might be, particularly when you look even for a Seanad by-election, that while there are conversations about it, will they be able to coalesce around the same candidates? You still have the Greens. I think they really were over the moon with their performance, particularly in Dublin Central on Saturday. They would potentially hope for a bit of a return. I'm not sure whether they would see the return in the same amount of time to put them in a position to go back into some sort of government formation negotiations. I think it's helpful for maybe those parties that it is so distant, that there is such a chance to build up that level of, I suppose, expectation, or maybe the sense of hope they would describe us after that Catherine Connolly campaign, that maybe there could be a way forward. But I think it would be difficult to say at this stage whether they will be able to, I suppose, manage to pan that all out, particularly when you look at Sinn Féin at the moment and where Sinn Féin plans on going. You know, Mary Lou McDonald said that their party is still a party of the left, but I think particularly on certain issues you can see them struggling, particularly in certain areas, because I think voters at this stage, different voters have different conceptions of who Sinn Féin is. And maybe that's the novelty then of parties like the Soc Dems, or even this kind of, I suppose, new form of Labour, where they're less, I suppose, burdened by this big beast, I suppose, of a party like Sinn Féin.
And then you had the Galway West result, a victory for Sean Kine, Fine Gael candidate, drawing comparisons to Noel Tracy, who won a by-election for the government back in the early 80s. But Sean Kine won largely because of transfers, mainly from Fianna Fáil. So you're also seeing a sort of transfer pact thing growing between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, which is going to complicate competition between them, because whichever one of them gets ahead in a particular constituency will gobble up the votes of the other. So it's kind of coming to this sort of European style politics where it's all about building alliances and relationships, and no party kind of breaking through bigger than the other, and what you're left with is loads of kind of medium-sized parties. So it's a very different political future than what we've known in the past.
And also interesting too, particularly when you look at the by-elections, I suppose someone like Sean Kine, I mean, we were saying for weeks and months since the presidential election that a government does not perform well in by-elections, and then you have a government candidate performing well, but I think candidate is the key word. And maybe as we come forward into the next elections, it's also interesting to see the fact that it's much less about that kind of party brand and more about the individual candidate. It'd be interesting to see maybe how voters perceive that as we come closer. You know, whether you'd vote Soc Dem, but it's less about someone being a Soc Dem and more about them being Daniel Ennis, and where that leaves the parties going into the next government.
Definitely, and the number one lesson I think for parties coming from these by-elections is choose your candidates really carefully, because it really does matter. Well, at least we have the Shannon by-elections to look forward to in the summer. And that's it from us for now. Thanks, Maeve, for chatting to us here in studio today. If you like listening, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you'll find plenty more on Indo Politics. Until next week, thanks for watching.